I'm very purpose driven, and I can't think of a greater purpose than that of a builder.
Welcome to The Power of Construction, a Procore podcast highlighting industry leaders evolving their business practices today to create a better future tomorrow. I'm Sasha Reed.
And I'm Chris Langiza.
The last episode, we discussed a crucial question around, despite the flood of data we have coming into our industry, we're still struggling to bridge that gap of really getting actionable insights that can drive the business and improve operations. But today we want to pivot and we want to ask a different question, which is, how is technology transforming the way we build in order to transform the image of construction? And even though we're using the same tools and we're evolving these same tools and we're evolving workflows, are we really impacting that image of construction that the public holds or perceives? So I want to share a little bit about what that public perception looks like. And I have a few statistics here. A Gallup survey in 2022 found that construction contractors are trusted less than many other professions, and with only 30% of respondents saying that they rated them as honest and having integrity, and that their standards were not necessarily high or very high. So looking across at other industries, we're scoring pretty low there. Also, the International Association for Public Participation, never heard of it before, but they've done some polls here that are quite interesting for us, noted that 45% of construction projects that face significant public opposition were delayed or in fact canceled. So telling us that public opinion does matter and it impacts our ability to drive revenue. And then finally, the Associated General Contractors of America reported in 2023 that 81% of construction firms were struggling to find workers. And that's also craft workers, office workers. Typically, I think we've been looking mostly at craft workers, but now we're also seeing office workers. And so this is continuing to contribute to a perception that the industry is outdated and clearly the numbers are telling us unattractive not only to the public, but to potentially new entrants. So, Chris, I really would love to get your take on this, kind of giving us a little more context to why this is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest challenges we're trying to overcome in our industry is getting people to join the industry. That is not in doubt. And when you have a poor public perception, it's really hard to convince people, hey, come on and join this industry, because their experience is the delay that they experienced on the way to work because of the highway or that public project that's supposed to have been started for many years but still hasn't quite made it. And so we have to combat that public perception of what construction is. And I think the other portion is when people think about coming into our industry, they're oftentimes thinking about coming into an industry that they envisioned from 20 or 30 years ago. And we've made significant advancements in our industry, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. And, it's a different industry today than it was before because of the technologies that we're adopting. Now, McKinsey reported in 2023 that 74% of industry leaders believe that the construction sector is adopting digital tools and recognizing improved benefits like project outcomes, which is really starting to shift, I think, in a big way, how we build or how people see how we build in the industry. And that is also contributing to us being able to attract younger talent. So the Associated General Contractors of America in 2022 did a research project with Autodesk, and they showed that adoption of new technologies like drones, AI, 3D printing, all the cool and fun stuff, has contributed to a 10% increase in young professionals enter in the industry. And we are in dire need of these individuals coming into the industry. So anything we can do to make it seem like, hey, we are actually advancing in a big way, There are new tools, new jobs for you in the industry, and we are allowing you to grow with this industry and also shape the future of how we will build for the foreseeable future. Now, it's not always just about technology, it's also about how we build the buildings. And so there's been a lot of recognition of sustainable practices, and that has helped with our public perception as well. A 2023 survey by the World Economic Forum found that 65% of respondents believe the construction industry is taking significant steps towards sustainability through the use of green building materials, energy efficient designs, challenging the notion that the sector is resistant to change and not willing to invest in the future of how we build for a more sustainable world. So all of these factors are really playing a big role in changing the perception of what people think about construction, how they think about how projects get executed, and how they think about how we are committing to building a better world around us.
I'm hoping that in this conversation, we can dig a little bit deeper and bring in some industry expertise. So that's a perfect segue for me to introduce our guest today is Todd Wynne, Chief Innovation Officer for Rogers O'Brien. Todd leads the creation, development, and implementation of products, processes, and services to improve RO's efficiency, effectiveness, and competitive advantage. He combines business and construction science degrees with his experience in field operations as well as software development. So he's a double whammy in that. Project Atlas, a software that Todd co-created, was acquired by Bluebeam in 2018. And Todd was recently named Distinguished Recipient of the National Building Design and Construction 2023's 40 Under 40 Award, and was also recently featured in Inc. magazine's article about creative ways to reach skilled talent. Todd, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Sasha and Chris. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're so excited to have this chat today.
And clearly, the things that we want to talk about today, there's actually some recognition that you've received and the work that you're doing is having an impact, specifically on thinking about that image of construction. But we have a history together. We've known each other for over 15 years.
Yes, many years.
And during your 15 plus year career, you've done a lot around reshaping the image of construction by the application of technology. I mean, I think back to, I think it was 2016, you and I sat down for an interview when you were using Google Glass and you were working on the innovations of Google Glass and how to apply that to the business. And, you had me try it on and I got to awkwardly, like now I think about it, it's like awkwardly. But I mean, then that's innovation. You have to be comfortable with looking weird and
Absolutely.
test things. But I'd love for you to tell me, why has this idea or this theme of innovation to not only push the industry forward, but also attract the next generation been such an important theme for you?
Yeah, well, it's the greatest industry in the world. And I'm very purpose driven, and I can't think of a greater purpose than that of a builder. And I think that part of changing the image of construction is really getting people to understand how much meaning and purposeful work that can be done in not just the job or the career in construction, but for me, this is a calling. And I can't think of a greater responsibility than to be able to shape the geometry for everyone that lives on this little blue marble.
Man, that's pretty inspiring.
Very.
Well, Todd, you have the title of Chief Innovation Officer, and I want to talk a bit about that because this kind of sends a signal, not just internally at RO, but also externally to the industry. Like, why is it so important that RO has a Chief Innovation Officer? And what's the message that you are sending to your employees, but also to those that you're recruiting at the organization?
Yeah, it's definitely a new title in our industry, and that was very intentional at RO. I wear many of the traditional hats of a CTO, traditional CIO, even some COO duties, but it's more of in recognition of there is a better way to build the world. That's how we define innovation at RO, is it's nothing more than a better way. I think a lot of times we look at innovation being strictly digital, when in reality it could be a change in steps in process to arrive at a better outcome. So it was part of us trying to put our money where our mouth is to show that RO is on a mission to seek, to discover a better way to build. And we're very bullish on the belief that it can be part of our culture and that can be a competitive advantage.
Well, RO's always kind of been on the edge of investing in innovation. I mean, that's how Atlas came along. I mean, that's why you were able to be a glass hole all those years ago.
Yes, I was. I
had to bring it back.
I love it. I love it. So true.
And so, like, what does that like say to your employees? How do they feel about that? Do they feel like, oh my God, here's Todd and his new things all the time? Or are they like, hey, they're really trying to make us better?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the thing that keeps me up at night. It's that, are we really putting our most valuable asset as an individual, which is our attention, towards solving problems that are going to have the largest impact, actually discovering those better ways to create a better outcome? And so I'm hopeful that our people see that we're not just innovating at the tools, the hammer that's in their hand, but also even in the org structure. I mean, it happens to everyone. We all become wise to a world that no longer exists. Mm-hmm. So even the way we organize our people on the bus, as Jim Collins, Good to Great, would say, where are they sitting on the bus before you determine what you want to do? And I think that it's real easy to get caught in the trap of coming from this analog industry and keeping many of the constraints in place while you're trying to capitalize on some of these new processes, these new tools, these new better ways to arrive at your outcome. So I think that I'm hopeful that the people at RO see that we're not just innovating in the tools, we're actually innovating everywhere, from our strategic planning process to how we do goal setting to how we even talk to each other in the trailer.
And it's pretty clear that the mission, or the remit for innovation at RO is much larger than technology, and it's about innovating the organization as a whole. But we had Eric Woobery on from Arco, who's also a VP of innovation. But we've also heard of companies moving away and starting to shutter some of their innovation teams. Why do you think this is happening? Is it troubling to you? Like, what's leading to that?
Yeah, it's extremely troubling to hear, because a lot of these individuals are problem solvers and they are passionate at discovering that better way. I think one of the largest challenges is back to the old mindsets that have become wise to a world that no longer exists, think that, well, I can bolt on innovation. I can bolt on a problem solver and they can find us a new tool, that new hammer that is going to make all of our outcomes come true. But that's not how it works. It's really starts with mindset. It starts with language. I'm a big fan of how Procore always says language defines culture. It absolutely does. And it really starts there. And then the process and tools can follow, and actually the success around leveraging and capitalizing on those new processes and tools can follow. But if you're creating an innovation group or a position, and you're not allowing those individuals to be activated to work on the core of the business, but instead just trying to provide that new tool to insert in, you're never going to have the impacts that you're desiring.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think so many times we see innovation teams that are, hey, go find us the new thing. You're the team that's going to find a new technology, put it out. You're solving individual problems, but not looking across the business.
Yes.
And when we talked to Eric previously, he really highlighted this, like many of the problems or challenges that they are solving are across multiple departments.
Yes.
They are core to the business's operations.
Yes.
And I think that's why people like yourself and Eric have been successful, is because you're allowed to operate up at that level, as opposed to those who may be, kind of held down at, hey, we're at a field execution level. Don't touch anything in accounting. Don't touch anything on pre-con.
Right.
Like you live in one little world.
That's spot on. It's pigeonholing these thought leaders and not activating them to actually focus on the real problems. What always drives me crazy is when I'll talk to one of these innovation leaders that hasn't really gotten to focus on the core, and they'll say, Todd, what's your innovation roadmap look like? Well, it's my company's roadmap. They're not two separate things. They're one and the same. the most important question you can ever ask in your organization is, if everything remained the same, what's the one thing that we could do that would have the largest impact today?
Mm-hmm.
And that answer to that question is going to change over time. But if you're not able to be ruthlessly focused on the answer to that question and then put your innovation efforts around that problem, we get a little too obsessed over the shiny objects and finding these solutions and looking for a problem. So what my people at R are very tired of hearing me say is, be obsessed with the problem, be obsessed with the desired outcome. And if we live there, then we absolutely will move the needle.
So let's talk about some of those problems. Safety, big challenge in our industry.
Yes.
Sustainability,
Totally.
continuing to innovate and change the ways that we do things. How is technology actually starting to begin to address some of these challenges?
Well, I think that technology is the only thing that can actually bridge the gap in achieving the outcomes that we desire. Like safety is the one I got to start with, because it's 2024. And unfortunately, 3 people will die today in North America due to the current stats that we see. Even worse, 4 times that when it comes to mental health. So it's pretty, I feel like I'm in a Twilight Zone episode whenever I see all this amazing technology of AI and robotics and 3D printing and all these things that are occurring, but we still can't send everyone home safely.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that that's because language and mindset has taken our industry as far as it can when it comes to creating the proper awareness of being safe. And, the definition of an accident is we didn't plan on it occurring, but we're still putting people in harm's way. And I think that technology will be the bridge to creating that zero harm to humans on site. So we're seeing it now with specific technologies we're deploying even around, we're in Texas right now filming this. So It's been a hot summer, not in the beginning, but the second half has been hot. And we've even been deploying wearable sensors to measure heat illness. That's something where we would have to really wait on the employee to come to us and say, hey, I can't keep working, which they never do.
Right.
And it's because the way our industry is built is, I got it.
Well, it's the mindset of the workers,
I can
right? It's
handle
like, I can do this. I'm strong. Like I have no problem, and I'm just going to keep powering through,
Exactly.
right? But I think what I love about that example is you're raising the awareness, and you're not making it passive for them to come to you. It's a much more active engagement, and the technology is facilitating that much more active engagement and awareness to not just the worker, but their manager, the foreman, the company as a whole. And I think that's really important.
It's the ultimate. I just think that we're all driven because we're trying to make a living. We're trying to win for our team. You're not in this industry unless you have conviction to win.
Yeah.
But the problem is at times we put winning above everything. And that's where I think we need to leverage technology to help putting those red flag mechanisms in our face to say, wait a second, what you're really trying to achieve is going to be affected because of a problem here.
Yeah, and I think you're tapping into something which is really important, which is the technology becomes a prompt. It becomes a data point. It becomes insight that leadership can see, because culturally, construction attracts individuals who are very much about grit and perseverance.
The grind.
And I have some other words I could use, but I'll stick with those. And that creates a culture of not raising your hand and saying, I need help.
Right.
But we also have policies and pay structures that economically don't allow them. And many times those who are in the field are at the weakest link when it comes to the economics and have the greatest impact to them.
Right.
And so I think there are some very real things about the policies of constructions and the construction and the way that we're enabling workers to opt into saying, hey, I need a break, or these conditions are not bearable. And I'm curious to get your perception on this. How is that either creating a perception about the industry, or what do you see as some of these misconceptions? So there's two dual realities. There's a reality of construction that the public's well aware of. But when it comes to this next generation coming into the industry, what are you seeing as some of those realities and misconceptions that's keeping young people from joining the industry?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, Sasha. I mean, this is not your grandfather's industry anymore. Some of the initial misconceptions are that unsophisticated, unorganized, nothing but physical labor. And there's so much more to it. I think that if we could educate the public and the younger generation to understand that we are full of meaning, purpose, and we have the opportunity to solve some of the most complex problems with some of the newest, most advanced technology. That's what's on the horizon for us. You both know well that everything we build is a prototype. I mean, it's a new schedule, it's new materials, it's a new plan, it's new estimate, it's even new people working together. And there's not a greater challenge than trying to create a prototype, especially when you have the amount of risk around people's lives, the public, just the actual cost itself. And I think that if we can change that perception, I know that the younger generation is searching for purpose. They're searching for meaning. It's no longer just about the highest paycheck. It's about, where do I want to attach my attention and time, my most valuable asset, and I want it to have an impact. And I think that even COVID was an accelerant for the rest of us to realize that life is short. Mm-hmm. Am I working in a job, or do I have a good career, or have I found my calling? And that's where I encourage everyone to seek their calling. But gosh, there's so much opportunity in our industry to discover it.
But there's something you said in an earlier conversation we had, and I want to repeat it to you because I would love to get you to expound a little bit on this. You said when it comes to young people coming into the industry, they're buying the book based on the cover. Then they open it up and it's 100 years old.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, where that comes from is it's fun to be young and see these big earth moving pieces of equipment and these skyscrapers and these bridges, and to think that could be cool to be a part of. But when they enter in, and then we have some of these antiquated mindsets and the language we use, we come from a very command and control style of leadership, this authoritative. And in reality, that is not ideal for solving problems. As we all know, whenever a command and control communication is a one-way street, well, the way that message is even being misinterpreted, it's happening every day. Questions calibrate understanding. We have to be able to have conversation and communication and really debate and challenge to ultimately find a better way. So we have a challenge with that in our industry right now. And I would just call it straight out that we have an absence of good leadership in this industry that sets the mindset for that future generation's opportunity to come in and to collaboratively discover a better way to build.
Yeah, I mean, and I love that. And I think you said it, hey, there's a lot more to this industry than swinging a hammer, right? And I think that's what a lot of people think of as construction, but they don't think of all the other roles that are required. I think Josh Bone in an earlier episode was talking about, we need people in marketing, we need people in accounting, we need people in pre-construction and engineering. And so there's all these different roles that all could contribute to what I will say are some global changing projects sometimes. Yes. Now, the challenge is not everybody gets to work on one of those fusion reactors or something really cool like that. But there's still so much challenge to the job every single day. I like to tell people who are thinking about construction, if you like to come to work and have to solve a different problem than every day than you did the day before, probably a good industry for you.
If you're scared of monotony, come to our industry.
It'll be different. I guarantee
it is a different challenge.
Literally where you show up on the job site might be different every day.
Right.
So
exactly.
That's how much change happens so fast in our industry.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering around that change and some of the technologies that we're seeing and some of those new roles, is it actually starting to dispel some of those misconceptions? And are they seeing what they see on the news of robot dogs walking around job sites and drones flying around the outside? Is that actually making an impact?
It is. We're at the tip of the iceberg still. And trust me, even at RO, we're trying to leverage that heavily to show what's occurring today and what's going to be happening tomorrow when you enter this workforce in this industry. But the challenge is still getting it interconnected and interwoven into all parts of the business. So we go to career fairs with our drones, with our Apple Vision Pros and our VR, any other headsets. And because what we're trying to do is show that, hey, yeah, this isn't your grandfather's industry. This is a industry that is full of problem solvers that are now starting to leverage cutting edge tools to solve these really complex problems. I think another misconception is pay. Mm-hmm. Our industry, I mean, if you even go back to the 80s, parents were brainwashed that if you're not going to a 4-year university to become a doctor or an engineer, then you're not going to have a successful and fruitful, financially fruitful career where, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I see a builder that just got a new boat and it's called bonus check.
Yeah.
So I think that's another misconception, is to know that there's so much opportunity to be able to create a wonderful standard of living and to have meaning and purpose in how you're achieving that success.
And so it's clearly making an impact on how you recruit. How is it having an impact in the interactions you have with your clients and the trust that they have there and the outcomes that you're able to deliver? Do you have any good examples of where that technology is providing that breakthrough moment for how you're delivering for your clients?
Totally. I mean, even going back to some of the statistics Sasha was sharing, it makes a lot of sense, the mistrust from clients into our industry. And that, I think, is mainly due to a lack of transparency. Transparency is a prerequisite to trust. If there's ever the feeling that there's a veil and there's more behind it than you know, then it's hard for you to have that deep trust that needs to exist. So I think that the exciting thing that's occurring in our industry right now is we are creating more transparency around what's occurring on the project in relation to the 4 pillars of the build: schedule, cost, quality, safety. We're doing a really good job of this on the data side. I think where we still have more opportunity is on the reality capture side. So right now, for an owner or even the public to be able to know the state of a project, they have to physically be present. And we have this amazing opportunity to give telepresence through virtual reality, through reality capture, whether it's doing just a little walkthrough and being able to understand what's in place. That is going to create more transparency, that when you have that linked with the data and seeing where we are in the schedule and how much has been spent, that's going to give owner much more comfort in being able to know that, hey, here's the plan. Here's where we are in relation to the plan. Here's some of the unforeseen conditions that have occurred. That's what's so challenging in our industry, is the level of communication that's required to create the proper level of transparency for trust. Technology is going to help bridge that gap so that we're not letting the communication fall through the cracks. Because right now it's on our people to be good communicators. And that's why the clients that love our best builders, it's usually because those builders are the best communicators.
I want to shift a little bit and have us start to look towards future state. There's a statistic that the Bureau of Labor Statistics said that the average age of the construction worker has increased over the past 7 years from 40 to 42, which is double our national average, while the number of workers 25 and under has decreased by 9%, and we're currently trailing the national average by 3 percentage points. And we have a retirement cliff that continues to, we're hitting milestone after milestone. So when you think about that dynamic within the workforce and you're looking towards the future, what is it that RO and that you're doing today with technology to start to address that specifically?
Yeah, it's scary what's ahead of us. And I hear a lot of people talking about the skilled labor shortage. By the way, I keep wanting to drop labor and call it skill shortage, because it's real easy for the people to think, well, but with immigration and we can put bodies on projects. We're actually seeing an increase in safety incidents. We're seeing an increase in quality nonconformance because unsophisticated individuals are being put on these projects. Right now, it's we have just canaries in coal mines, but we don't really have real tangible solutions to address this problem, which is really interesting because this connects to the public perception of our industry too. We will definitely be in the spotlight in the next 7 to 8 years, and it won't be an industry problem anymore. It'll be a societal issue. But for RO, what we've been specifically doing, it started with education, teaming up with companies like Procore, Apple. I mean, in the last 3 years, I've spoke to thousands of high schools, to the educators, and virtually. I haven't gone to each high school, but that's not moving the needle fast enough. Another statistic I heard, and someone can check this, but I heard that it's essentially about a quarter of our workforce is over the age of 55. And that really does line up with what we see. I mean, right now, if you walk an RO job, you'll see a foreman walking with 6 apprentices behind them. And so you can see the writing on the wall of how big of a challenge we're going to have ahead of us. So what we're also trying to do is lean into automation and augmentation and leveraging technology. I'm very bullish on robotics, very bullish on AI. We're going to have to be able to automate the 3 Ds. If it's dull, dirty, or dangerous, let's automate it. And then on the augmentation side, we have to create huge strides in knowledge augmentation to where we can meet unsophisticated builders with the answer at hand with whatever tasks that they're addressed with.
Yeah, I think it's so important that we bring that information that's being extracted from previous experience, and we're able to level up the next generation faster by bringing that information in real time.
Yeah, the thing that scares me, Chris, is that it's real easy for us to bottle up the fundamentals of construction. It's the art. It's the tacit knowledge that I have a lot of fear, and that's where I have a lot of anxiety, and we're putting a lot of efforts in now of how to actually start capturing some of the, I mean, we associate the best builders with age.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. It's because they have over time built their own constructopedia of lessons learned and best practices. I'll give you a very specific example. When I was a young project engineer, I was putting in this walk-in freezer on for a kitchen in a hospital. And the general superintendent said to me, well, be sure to prop the door open whenever we did a little topping slab inside when the concrete's curing. And I said, why? And he said, well, the off-gassing will stain the stainless steel. How would I know that? Yeah. You're not going to learn that in a textbook. You're not going to learn that in some self-paced training, or even, I am hopeful that AI can meet you with some of those lessons learned and best practices, but we got to be able to bottle them up. So I was driving in an Uber the other day, and the Uber driver and I got into a conversation, and it turned out he was a master electrician for over 30 years. And he's now driving an Uber. And I said, well, that's great, but why'd you leave our industry? He said, well, I can't get up the ladder anymore. And I said, but what's in your mind we need to activate? We need Uber for construction, where you could call a subject matter expert and know some of that tacit knowledge being delivered on demand.
And I think that's an important piece, that we've relied on the internal brain of experienced workers to help with quality and safety. We are now in an economy and in an environment due to technology where that can be captured into a standard operating procedure, built into technology that has workflows that step somebody through that process. But if we are not realizing that is a capability for technology, we're letting those individuals retire out. And frankly, most are burnt out.
They are.
It is not for a will of wanting to leave this industry better than when they started, but because the business doesn't recognize the mechanics of capturing that and building that into an SOP.
Absolutely.
We're letting them sit on the sidelines and retire. But I think there's organizations like RO and with individuals like yourself who can focus on that piece of it, of how are we going to capture that knowledge and how are we going to build that into the technology.
We've even instituted something dramatic this year. about 3 months ago, we instituted a new process around transferring the art of construction. If you think about it, the only way you can actually, you can't cheat time. And that's where the art comes from, is having the ability to apply fundamentals over and over and gain some of that tacit knowledge, some of that experience. The way that we feel that we can maybe cheat a little bit of time is by putting that seasoned builder with that young, inexperienced builder in an environment that has intentionality with it. So we actually have now once a month, everyone in RO and operations has to do an art job walk. And this is where we've created what we call art cards. And they're based on different aspects of construction, based around the sequencing of how a building goes into place, or how do you do buyout. And then what they're really focused on, that seasoned builder has in their mindset at that time, I need to be explaining not the fundamentals, but all the nuances of best practice and lessons learned that would normally not get transferred just through the training of how to do buyout or how to sequence a project. So it's something we're experimenting with right now. And then at the same time, we're documenting in Procore. We're actually using action plans for this, which is really cool. And my hope is that we can begin to collect this tacit knowledge so that we can train AI models to be able to then supplement it in the future.
I love the art walk, and you just need like film crews following everybody around all the time.
We do.
So that literally you're capturing this, and then we can extract the information and
Yes.
the data later, because I think there's so much knowledge there that can be passed down, but it requires an active engagement,
That's
not
it.
just like somebody sitting down and trying to say, okay, let me brain dump everything.
Right.
It's, hey, like I need somebody to prompt me and ask me some questions,
Right.
because I would never think to mention that.
It has to be in context.
That's right.
That's the way it works. And we tried that. We set builders down and said, hey, tell us. And they're sitting there going, well, I don't know. But you put them in the context and it just starts flowing out, because it's their own brain is getting triggered by what they're experiencing and what they're seeing. But there's so much more opportunity there. We're just scratching the surface, but we have to capture it. Because as you said, Sasha, our industry has been built on experience. But we now are at the precipice to where we have this opportunity to supplement the experience and the lack thereof of that experience with historical insights and data and situational insights and data. And that is what's going to create the hybrid builder.
We've talked a lot about tech, but should we talk about some of the other trends that are impacting?
Please. This is where my passion is moving these days.
Well, I'm curious, when you look and you think about some of these next tech trends, I want to know, what are you seeing as that next tech trend that's coming on the horizon?
Yeah. So let me get out of the way. AI and robotics, those two for sure, 100%. And I really bucket everything around those two categories, the two A's, automation and augmentation, because really a lot of what we're going to be able to leverage with AI, robotics, especially embodied AI in robotics, is going to fit within those two domains. But until we're able to activate more of that, we have got to get to measuring what really matters. I honestly think that we've been measuring the wrong things. And I wouldn't have discovered this if I wouldn't have gone through the journey I've been going through, which started as a builder, then as a technologist, a construction technologist. And now I've been really in this discovery mode. And I think this even goes back to our discussion around why some innovation teams are shutting down. It's the realization that buying just that new hammer or coming up with a new process it's not affecting the core. And that's where I think anyone who's listening to this can agree that they've had that kind of hallway conversation where they're like, well, we know it's not the tool or the process that's the problem. It's people. And I think that's where we've been measuring the wrong thing. If you think about what we do, is we build these projects and they're not built by individuals. They're built by teams. And we're not measuring the operational effectiveness of team health in construction, which now it's a whole nother Twilight Zone episode for me. It's like, why have we, this is the ultimate leading indicator to the lagging indicators of how are we doing on schedule? How are we doing on quality? The 4 pillars of the build: schedule, cost, quality, safety. Doesn't matter if it's a high rise, an airport, a bathroom renovation. Those 4 pillars are measured on every single project. What's not measured is what's influencing that. And that's where I think there's this untapped opportunity to and realization that if we can begin to use different forms of technology as well as leadership and cultural tactics to measure as well as cultivate the right team health, that is what's really going to move the needle on our desired outcomes. And ultimately, I want to link it to profitability. I know I can. I know that over the next coming years, I'm going to link the operational effectiveness of team health to profitability.
And it's funny because Chris, I remember interviewing you probably back in 2012, 2013. And back then when you were in operational excellence and in the field, you told me a story of the superintendent's smile, that the superintendent's smile was a leading indicator of the health of that team. But the way that you were leveraging RFI response times was the hard data indicator you had of if response times, like say the benchmark was a 2-week response for that RFI. If you looked in your dashboard and you saw that there was a longer response time for the RFI, that was a leading indicator for you that there was a people problem on that team. And so that would be your pick up the phone and have a conversation
somewhere.
Correct. So I think that was 12 years ago that we had that conversation. Now we're actually in a position where large language models.
Yes.
I'm thinking about the integration of data.
Sentiment analysis.
Yes.
Sentiment analysis was something we started to look at in daily logs. You look at a superintendent and just how positive or negative is their sentiment and what they're writing down every day can be a huge indicator of the health of the team and the 100%. Health of the project.
Yeah, that's what's so crazy to me is that we're literally measuring lagging indicators, and we've created some really interesting industry standards. We can use schedule compression as a leading indicator for how the lagging result is going to occur. But when it comes to the operational effectiveness of team health, we don't have anything in the industry. Actually, the only standard we have around measuring in the industry around people is an EMR rating, which is did they die yesterday? I mean, which is just insane to me. So I really do believe that if companies can begin to recognize, and here, I'm going to prove it to you right now. Anyone who's listening that's a builder, I know that you've had a project where you've gone into the plan with a really good plan. You've got a great estimate, you got a good schedule, but it still was a project right now. And I bet you've also had the inverse of that, where you signed up for something that you were like, I don't know how we're going to achieve this, but the team came together and they overcame it. That's your proof in the pudding right there, is that we're seeing it every day. And it took me 15 years to be able to now step on a job site and just spend half a day with the team, and I can feel the chemistry. I can see the way they're collaborating, the way they're supporting. To be honest, it's really the language they're using, which tells me how aligned they are. Yeah. If I ask what's critical path today and I get 2 different answers, well, that's a red flag. Yeah. But if they're all speaking the same language, they have clarity, they have focus, which is alignment. And if they have alignment over time, there's your results. I mean, you can literally create a mathematical equation for results. It's clarity plus focus times time. If we can create that within teams and even expand that out to the stakeholders of the project, not just RO's team, but actually all the stakeholders, the client, the design team, the trade partners. And that's where there's a lot of discovery to be made over the coming years. And until AI and robotics can help us bridge some of the labor, the skill shortage that we're experiencing, we have got to learn how to activate teams to do more with less.
So as we think about technology, innovation, and how it's evolving the industry and even the people side of it, what does that future workforce look like?
Yeah.
What does that ideal team of the future look like?
Yeah. I mentioned hybrid builder earlier, and some might be listening like, what do you mean by that? And I see the future builder, I see the lines between office and field blurring. Technology is going to do that. Right now, there's swim lanes. We're going to move to swimming pools, collaborative, and technology is going to help with that. I see agile mindsets. I see change agents. That it's this recognition, and this also ties back to some of the misconceptions that our industry doesn't like change. Well, it's hard to learn something new when your hair's on fire. Right?
True.
It's hard to actually experiment and even try a better way whenever it was due yesterday. And I think that's where we get a bad rap. So I think in the future, one thing that's going to have to change is the team dynamic. Once we can show that how we're effectively and in an agile way working together to solve the problems, when the culture and that changes, it's going to create an environment that shapes, we're all products of our environment, right? So it's going to shape more of the hybrid builder that is a problem solver, that is a team player, that doesn't see this is my lane. They see we're in the planning stage of the project or we're in the execution phase of the project. But it's going to be, I mean, I'll give you some more really vivid images. We will be able to remotely manage and measure where we're winning and losing. We can't do that right now. I was telling Chris earlier, we have to geographically insert ourselves, in other words, walk the job,
Right.
to even inspect what we expect is happening. We use eyes and fingers right now to actually measure, to get a pulse to where we're winning and losing. So having the ability to surface those insights, that is going to allow us to direct our most important asset, which is our attention. And too many times we're just burning our attention away because we're searching for the most impactful place to place it. But luckily in the future, we're going to have the assistance for proactive notifications and even prescriptive insights on how we should approach our attention to have the largest impact that day. So I'm a big fan of imagining the day when, based on who showed up on site today, what materials available, what's critical path of the schedule, what's the environmental weather conditions, your task list, your prescriptive.
Here's the
next
things you should
move.
go work on today.
Here's your next move.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And that's something I dream of, because as thinking back to being a project engineer, you don't know your next move.
Yeah, you have 8,000 things on the to-do list.
That's
You have
it.
no idea which ones matter the most.
That's it.
And it changes every single day, and you'd spend a lot of time just prioritizing
That's it.
which work.
Squeaky wheel gets the grease.
That's
And
right. Yeah.
I also see continuous construction occurring. We'll be staging at night and building during the day,
And
and
more around the clock up.
round the clock be able to build more efficiently and more effectively.
Love it.
Well, I think you've painted a really good future state that I think you're preaching to the choir on this one a little bit, that Chris and I agree with you and endorse 100%. But Todd, thank you so much for joining us today, sitting down with us, having this conversation. I just want to recap a little bit of what I heard, and I think some of what I learned. Actually, you've changed my mind on one thing. I think in the past I had said, I felt like the industry was afraid of change, but you brought that really into focus, which is a little more empathy on it is very difficult to change when your margins are low, and majority of what you're used to being rewarded for is solving a problem, and majority of what drives you is the conflict.
Yes.
So that kind of cultural change, I think, is going to take time. So thank you for sharing that today. So some of what I learned and heard today is that technology and innovation absolutely go hand in hand.
Yes.
The second thing was we need to think beyond the act of building. We need to think about how we're innovating, how we apply new and existing technology. I think I heard a little bit of that. It's not just how improving how we build, but it changes how the world sees construction as an industry. So that was a big one for me. And then the final one, and again, both of you professionally have lived this within your roles. And Chris, now on the technology side, I know you champion a lot for this internally, even with our product teams, is how we are measuring how teams are working together in order to use those insights and to pull leaders away from these lagging indicators that we're comfortable with, but they're not telling us how to solve the problems. And this comes down to schedule, cost,
Yes.
quality, and all those. So thank you so much for
My
sharing those
pleasure.
with us and for all the work that you do with RO to continue to help that company innovate.
I appreciate it. It's
But
an honor.
We're not done yet. We've
Oh.
got some rapid fire questions
All right.
that we're going to go through here. So first question, what book are you currently reading or listening to? Or what book would you recommend most to someone?
I'll give you both. I'm currently listening. I was on the drive down here listening to Malcolm Gladwell's Talking to Strangers, and very insightful halfway through. And I love Gladwell. If you've never read any Malcolm Gladwell,
big Gladwell fan.
Outliers will change your life.
Yep.
The book I would recommend, though, I said it at the beginning, Good to Great, Jim Collins. For the leaders that are listening, that's a book I read every 3 years. So it's kind of it's one that if we can lean into more and understanding what is level 5 leadership, that balance of personal humility and professional will, that's what our industry needs. We need more. We need more on the humility side, to be honest. We have enough will to run through a wall. We need more courageous vulnerability, balancing that out.
I love that.
So,
yes, Brene Brown. Shout out to Brene Brown.
Absolutely. So that I got to share this. One thing we realized at RO, to be innovative, that's an outcome. You have to create a learning culture. So at RO, every employee gets 2 free books every month. And we use a system called Libro.fm, and it's audiobooks. So they, in converting all that windshield time into learning time.
Great.
That's fantastic. Love that. And love Outliers. I think a big reason that probably the two of us are where we are in our careers is because we were in the right place in an industry at the right time that was looking for technology change. And we were the generation that was just ready to use it. So
that's it. You got to execute at that intersection of opportunity.
Yep.
That's it.
All right. So what's your go-to source for gaining different perspectives to inform yours?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say definitely reading, definitely books. I am an avid reader, but also, I mean, in this industry, and you know this, Chris, you know this, Sasha, networking is key.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm one of the biggest inputs to creating an innovative output is diversity of perspective. So if you're trying to innovate right now, don't do it in a bubble. Like so I lean heavily on my Rolodex of relationships in the industry when I've really been sourcing this team health idea, and I've been talking and getting everyone's different perspectives. And at the end, don't fall in love with your idea, fall in love with the best idea. And so crowdsource from your peers.
All right. If you could, and you may have just said it, I don't know, but if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh man, that's a tough one because I'd give myself a lot of advice. The one that I think would come with some of the greatest impacts would be don't be afraid to fail. Every setback is a learning opportunity that then creates resilience and understanding next. So the way I distill it down, and this is what I preach heavily now to young individuals that are starting their careers, is use fear as a compass. If it's scary, you're probably headed the right direction.
Love that.
Wise. Very wise.
All right. What's just one, Todd?
Oh, God. Oh, no.
Trend or innovation that you think is going to shape the future of construction? You got to pick.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to cheat.
It's like picking your favorite kid. I get it.
I'm going to cheat.
Okay.
Embodied AI.
Okay. So you're putting them together. I get what you're doing.
AI inside a robot. The embodiment of AI in robotics. I think we'll have one of the largest because we can stop putting people in very dangerous conditions and send them home to their families.
Love that. We were talking a little bit about the fastening robots for the slab edge yesterday that they're using here in Austin.
Raise Robotics.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
so cool.
Really cool stuff.
All right, last question. If construction could have a tagline, what would it be?
I got a few. I can only give you one.
One. We might let you have a slip in a second one.
Shaping the geometry where life happens.
Love it.
Wow.
I'd also throw out there's no greater purpose than that of a builder.
I like that one.
Beautiful.
I said that earlier.
Building. Yeah. Building for others is the ultimate meaning, whatever it may be. A building or creating anything for someone else's. Yeah. But I'd lean on the first one.
I think they go nicely together.
I do too.
And on that note, I think there's no better note to end on that. And for all of you marketers, well, you've heard it now, so it's out in the world. Thank you again.
Steal like an artist. Take it.
I love it. I think if we had more companies that were leveraging that as their tagline, not only to pursue new work, but also to think about how they're attracting that next generation, we'd be in a much different place. And I hope 10 years from now, we can look at the statistics and see that individuals, honestly, like both of you and those who we're interviewing here on the show, have reshaped that. So for those of you who are listening, if what we've talked about today resonates with you, please subscribe, like, share it with your network, as Todd talked about. And we'll continue to bring you stories of leaders who are reshaping the industry and harnessing the power of construction. Thank you so much.